All right, I'm going to go for it. Thanks, everybody, for showing up in the virtual world on Hopin. I am Caroline Roberts, and I'm here to talk about improving your on-site search. And a shout out to Bethany, because she has been awesome in training us and keeping us chill, and her YouTube tutorials were fantastic. So props. I'm Caroline. I work for an agency named iFactory. It's in Boston, and we focus on higher ed websites. But even though I'm going to be talking about a lot of higher ed examples, I feel that many of these tips and tricks can apply to multiple business verticals. But the reason why higher ed. So I agree. The reason that I've gained a bunch of experience in organic and on-site search is that these are huge, massive sites, and they have a lot of information that's difficult to navigate. The company I work for regularly recommends Drupal to clients to facilitate that with all of the search options and the power that can be harnessed by Drupal. And one thing that I've learned when working with these monster sites and all this information is that when students and faculty can't find something, they have two responses. First, they go to Google. Even though their website has a search box on it, they're going to go to Google first. And most of the searches that lead to a higher ed website, the average is about 61% coming in from Google or Bing or an organic search site. And if they do use the site search, they often go right back to Google to find what they need. So it seems that on-site search, particularly in higher ed, could use a little more care and feeding. And while the home page is typically the most popular page on a higher ed website, you can't assume that students in particular are going to go directly to a home page and then start navigating to the page that they want from there. Many of them are going to come in sideways, either through Google or Bing or your on-site search. So higher ed is one example of why it's really important to make sure that your Drupal site is optimized for both organic and on-site. And I'm going to talk about the differences between organic and on-site search, just a quick overview and lay of the land, and then make my case for why on-site search is really, really important. Even if it doesn't generate the numbers and the traffic for organic search, it can really be powerful for converting in higher ed or making a sale in any other vertical. And then the second half of the presentation is going to cover how to improve on-site search by employing organic search practices and making the most of what you're already doing on the organic side, improving your search UI or your interface. Then, once you've done all that, continually going back and looking at the data that you captured so you can improve the content on your pages. That's probably one of the coolest things about on-site searches, that if you have Google Search Console and you've got it hooked into your Google Analytics, you can see what keywords people are using on your on-site search. And then you can make that content even better. Oh, and the last one is talking about the specific tools that iFactory has used to benefit clients, because we've used various forms of Drupal working with clients. Clients have different needs and different budgets, but we have found a cluster of tools that work, and I'm going to provide a list of those in this presentation and share links to the presentation at the end. So, organic versus on-site search. Organic search is site traffic that comes in from Google or Bing. And like I said, about 61% on average of search comes in, 61% of traffic to higher ed websites comes in through organic search. That's from BrightEdge. And then when you look a little bit deeper, you find that the bulk of that is Google and about 10% of that is Bing. So Bing still holds its own in there. Then on-site searches are searches that use the custom search engine, and iFactory has worked with clients that use Solr or Elasticsearch or Google Custom Search. And there's a reason that I threw in the gulp when I say Google Custom Search, which I'll discuss later. So many users rely on organic search to find what they need because Google and Bing results are just more accurate and easier to read. So I've got a few examples of how Google search results can be more effective than using your client's on-site search, and how you're competing in a way with Google. Your on-site search is competing in a way with Google and Bing. So first off, here's an example from one of our sites. It's pretty common that a student is going to search for information about the fitness center and its hours, or even whether or not the gym is open these days. The fitness center, I just saw a comment. Hey, nice, Anthony, what's Bing? Good point. I was like, 10%. Oh, Julie had asked, I should probably wait until the Q&A. The source for the 61% organic number is BrightEdge. So hope that helps. So yes, thank you for asking. And so students often search for information about the fitness center, and this particular client that we've worked with and tracked their organic search and their in on-site search terms for a few years, you'll see here, if I type in the name of the fitness center, the Gazette Fitness Center, and its hours, I get a really clear result at the top of my Google search engine results page. So you've got the title, campus recreation, and then Gazette Fitness Center hours are in bold. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but either way, you get a very clear result if you search for something that's pretty important to a current student through Google. Now, if I make the search for Gazette Fitness Center hours using this client's on-site search, the lay of the land is different. And if I look for that on their on-site search, you're going to see that what appeared first for the same search query now appears third in the on-site search. You get many different options, but the page that actually contains the hours shows up a little later, and the display is overwhelming. Now, this client, they had really, really good intentions. What they wanted to do was make it interactive. You're talking to the mascot, this cute little Viking over here. That's great, but the results are just hard to navigate. And they've applied facets for search, which is really smart, and that's a fantastic way to narrow results and get a little closer to what you need. But the facets are based on the source of the content instead of the content format or the subject matter. So it's really hard to narrow down. If I'm looking for the fitness center hours, it's probably not going to help me if I narrow down to the course catalog or to public records. On the bright side, though, the query is still in bold, Gazette Fitness Center hours. So this is the maximalist approach to a higher ed on-site search. Let's see how it compares if somebody takes a minimalist approach. So in this case, a lot of current students search for a summer session. And if you search for a summer session for one of our clients on Google, you get search results. It's a little wordy at the top, but it shows up at the top. Summer session is in bold. And you also get an ad, a value add of a people also ask box. So these are called SERP features, search engine results page features in the SEO world. And people also ask is really handy because you can dig a little deeper, get information about summer classes. If you click to expand it, it might not link to your client's site, but it could. Actually, it's very likely that it could if the question is specific enough. So that could also help drive traffic to your site from Google. Now, this particular client said, hey, Google's doing great, so let's not fix what's not broken. Let's go ahead and use Google Custom Search. It's cheap. Clients like to use it. Higher ed clients like to use it. So this particular client decided to install Google Custom Search. And if I search for summer session on the site, I get a prioritized result at the top. And then I get the summer session results plus some descriptor copy. But the downside is that when I make searches like this on a website and they've implemented Google Custom Search, I don't get those add-on features like the people also ask box, or even local packs or image packs or anything that might apply to any other vertical. So if a client decides to use Google Custom Search, they're losing a lot of the power of making their search engine's results page stronger and improving its UI. But even worse, they're also actually negating the importance of their own search because Google's is obviously better. You just get more out of it. So you're not really adding anything by using Google Custom Search. You are saving money, but it's just kind of pointless if you're taking the minimalist approach. So why is this a big deal? Why am I fretting so much over on-site search, especially if so many students are coming into the site through organic search? A lot of it is about where they are in the conversion funnel. So if you consider SEO opportunities for higher ed clients, you might see that a lot of the most popular search terms for organic and on-site search are highly specific, and they relate to offerings that are for prospectives who are leaning towards yes and current students. And that comes from a higher ed experts e-expectations survey. So that's why it's a big deal in the higher ed world, is that the searches are more targeted, you know what they're looking for, and you want to deliver on that very specific content. Especially if it's a perspective who's leaning towards yes, you want that perspective to turn into a current student. So some sample on-site searches for higher ed are academic calendar, bookstore, financial aid, that's always a big one, fitness center, summer session. If you keep digging through this over time, you're going to see that people who are using the on-site search are getting pretty committed to enrolling in your school or staying at your school. And even if your industry isn't higher ed, it's important to know that when somebody is using your on-site search, they're looking for something specific and they're already a little further down the conversion funnel. So my past work suggests that those who are already enrolled at your school or using your product are using both on-site and organic search engines. But you want to treat them well on their on-site search because they're in the decision and the retention stage of your funnel. And what do I mean when I talk about the funnel? Because this is one of those marketing terms, and sometimes I'm like, well, it's not a literal funnel, but it is the progress or the path that an individual takes on their way to becoming your client or your student. So it's somebody who has become aware of your product or your institution, not to say that institutions are products, but if they're aware of something, they're searching for, say, the name of the school, a very generic search. Then when they're considering it, they might ask, how do I apply for financial aid? How do I enroll at such and such school? when they're talking about really specific terms, it's more likely that they're making a decision. And if they're asking for questions like Gazette Fitness Center hours or summer session, it's very likely that they're already students or they're already engaged with your product. And that is where retention is really important, because given the situation with the coronavirus now, it may not be likely that students are going to go to your fitness center, but you can bet that they're going to be searching for really specific information like deferrals or when is school going to open again? Do I have to wear a mask in my lab? So you want to make sure that you've got the information available and easily discoverable on your on-site search. So that way they'll come back to your campus whenever things get around to opening up. So it also keeps people on your site instead of pogo sticking back and forth from your site to Google or Bing. If they're getting a good experience on your site, it's more likely that they'll come back to find information, especially for things like the academic calendar or your fitness center hours or financial aid information. So if they turn to Google or Bing, you have less control over the presentation. You want to show that you're a reliable resource. You want to show that you have the right, most accurate information, especially now. Students really need accurate information now. You also want to block out competitors, because if they're looking for something related to a particular program, like let's say a very popular term would be nursing program or nursing degree, it would be a lot better if they're on your site as opposed to possibly going, oh, hey, I didn't know that school offers a nursing degree and it's closer, so I may not have to travel as much and risk myself in coronavirus. So having a good on-site search can keep the focus on you. And if there's anything that you want to take away from this presentation, it is that you want to optimize your on-site search results and give it as much attention and love as your organic search results. So the next part of the presentation are ways that you can do that are not necessarily Drupal oriented, but some of them are. So how to improve. And a lot of it is applying the same basic search engine optimization principles for organic search to your on-site search, meaning that you're giving your content, you're making your content discoverable to any search engine, whatever it's using for your on-site or Google. Then remembering tagging and taxonomy. If you'll recall earlier, I showed you that faceted search with the cute little Viking mascot, only the facets weren't that helpful. So if you're tagging your content appropriately and you have some facets, particularly in your search results design, you're putting more control in the hands of the user, and you might be making your on-site search more enjoyable to use than Google. Then once you've got all that and you've got more people putting in data into your on-site search, that is hugely useful, because then you can look at terms that are captured by the on-site search to create better content. One of the sample clients that I showed is actually creating a new program in sociology. And all of a sudden there's an uptick in searches for sociology as they start putting out announcements that we're doing new sociology degrees and online degrees to become a therapist. So now that more people are inputting questions, we're finding out the phrases that they're using if somebody is interested in earning one of these degrees. This could actually help us generate and create target that aligns with what they're thinking and what they're looking for. And then the last part about ways to improve is making the most of the options that Drupal has to offer. So as I walk through this next portion of the presentation, I'm going to show some samples from iFactory clients. And sometimes it tends to be a mishmash because what works for one client doesn't work for another. But you can see the tools that iFactory has used and talk to your members of your team and ask, are we using that? Can we deploy that on our site, especially if we're using Drupal 8, or will that work for us? And I'll have a list of those at the end. So SEO best practices. I guess we can't really do a hands up in here, but in general, you'd want to ask yourself, are you looking at the keywords that lead to your site? You can do that if you've got Google Search Console installed, or if you've hooked Google Search Console into your Google Analytics. And in Google Analytics, that is, I believe, Acquisition Search Console queries, and you can see the queries that your site is ranking for. Also, are you talking to your current users about the terms that they use? I like to call this the graduation versus commencement conundrum, in that a lot of students and their parents will use an on-site search and they'll look for the term graduation, yet the school will use commencement. So the question is, do you have your on-site search set up so that way graduation can map to commencement? Keyword research is about more than ranking on Google. There's the added benefit of figuring out how your users think, what they really care about, and what they really want to know. Now, once you have these keywords, I do caution clients and users that we are getting into grunt work zone. Thank you. So we are getting into some major grunt work because search engines are not magic. Algorithms are not magic. You have to have words. You have to have copy. You have to have text in the right places in order for your web pages to be discoverable either in Google or on your on-site search. So the search engines don't show good results unless your team is filling out page metadata that tells your search engine what your content is about. And I'm figuring everyone here knows what page metadata is. But the catch is, it's a lot of hard work to generate really good page metadata that shows well on both Google and Bing. I keep forgetting Bing. Shout out to Bing. And in your on-site search. So it means it's up to your team to make sure that all pages have the following fields filled out. Either a page slug that reflects a really clear URL structure, a clear page title that includes the name of the page followed by your institution, which is something that you can do automatically within Google. I've actually had discussions with clients in which it should be a pipe or a dash or a colon separating the name of the page and the name of the school. I vote for a pipe, but colons are fine. And then the page description. This is probably the most important of all because Google, you need to provide a unique page description that will show up on Google that is succinct and entices users to click. And a lot of times, on-site search engines will not have these either. So it's very difficult to tell what you're going to be clicking on when you see a link in a search engine results page. And then alt text. And I bring up alt text because there's lots of talks about accessibility. Accessibility and SEO go hand in hand because it's providing text that can be read via a screen reader. And a screen reader, in a weird way, operates in a fashion that's similar to a search engine. They can't see the content on the page visually. They have to read it. They have to hear it. So you need to provide that copy. And if you're filling out these fields based on keyword research, based on the terms that are leading users to your site, or even just talking to your users, that's even better. So I've worked with teams that did everything right with SEO. They did a page audit. They did a lot of work to improve their page speed, which is a major factor in SEO. They talked to their students. And then I'll use a tool like Screaming Frog or Moz, and I'll find a whole bunch of missing page descriptions, which are probably the most important thing for both organic and on-site search. Shout out to Screaming Frog. It is the best. Just renewed my license. And this usually happens when team members get in a hurry. This happens a lot in higher ed because you could be working on thousands of pages. Most clients tend to be at about 10,000 pages, but I've worked with some institutions that are in the hundreds of thousands. So it's understandable that you might not have the chance to add a page description. But I do recommend adding page descriptions for really crucial pages involving your on-site search, program pages, financial aid, your fitness center, etc. And it's also important, even within the body copy, to mark up your headings properly. Because if you don't mark up your headings properly, you can cause accessibility issues and confuse screen readers, make it tough to navigate. And it can also make it hard on your search engines and Google and Bing to determine what is really important on the page. Like search engines often use what's in between an H1, an H2, and an H3. They use that to scan the page, and they prioritize your content, which helps it get higher in search results. Now, I've been talking a lot about organic search and how it can apply to on-site search, but this is an actual illustration of it. So this is a client that's on Drupal 8. They used the Search API module, Solar Server. This is great, very effective, but their page descriptions, they didn't get the chance to do them. So if I type in academic calendar, I get page results that are just pulled in based on whatever the search engine can access. And it's hard for me to see or tell what I'm going to click on. And I don't see anything that says academic calendar. So one thing that you're doing, even if you're doing QA or working with your development team on your site, make sure that A, page descriptions are being written and that they appear in the search results. And I'm going to talk about what these guys do right in a minute, but this is an example of those all-important page descriptions. And then in the case of this particular client, this is a client that uses Funnelback. And this is a sample from Google, actually, because this is a client that used keywords intelligently, and they include a CTA if it's appropriate, and it's very clear what you're going to get. So if I search for the phrase enrollment Flagler College, then I can see a description. Whether you are a newly admitted freshman or transfer student, this section will guide you through the enrollment process. It's short, it's sweet, and you know what you get when you're going to click, which is very different from this, which pulls in whatever is on the page. And this is a sample of how it looks in Google, but if you're doing your metadata correctly, it should appear in both. And since this is old-fashioned grunt work, either your CMS needs to require a page description before it goes live, or it needs to be part of your workflow. And like I said, it might be even more important for on-site search because there are just some things that have seemed obscure to you, but not to your clients. And it's just something that you want to include and make sure you have covered. Then there's tagging and taxonomy. Taxonomy is part of Drupal core, so you want to categorize your content and tag it properly. A good taxonomy impacts related links, events blocks, news blocks, and other dynamic modules. So it can help you organize your content on the back end and improve its display on the front end in the search results. So working with your clients, you can make sure that even an Excel spreadsheet determining various topic types can become a really helpful facet to help a user narrow down. This is a Drupal 7 client, an actual nonprofit site. They use Solar and the Facet API. So I worked with this client on their taxonomy to determine what fields should appear in their topic list. And then you're able to filter out various topics because on the back end, the client was taking the time to categorize its content, thereby making it easier for users to find what they need. And that was part of their workflow. Oh, that's a good question. You need to ask that. Somebody just asked, Fabian, thank you. Does Search API need to be configured to use the metadata description first versus the body? I do believe it does. And I can check back because I am not a developer, but I work with them in the wild often. And I do believe it does, yes. So ways to improve search interfaces. This goes down to the UI, and even working with your IA team, you can have a very strong search. You can make sure that the metadata description appears first, but you also need to think about the overall search design. And one of my favorites here is a client that really made their, yep, you do have to. Thank you, Yi. So you do have to make sure to prioritize your search box. Sometimes those little magnifying glasses get hidden, especially on mobile. This is a huge problem with the little magnifying glasses being hidden on mobile, or your thumb can't access it. Well, these guys, when you hit the magnifying glass, that glass may be small, but that box expands, so it's really easy to type in a particular term. This is a Drupal 8 site, DB with the Search API. And then once I put in dance, since this is a higher ed client, you can figure out that maybe if somebody types in dance, they could be searching for your program, but they could also be searching for an event. So here you have the chance to filter results by type. And this is super helpful for this particular client because you could go through all, you could sort by degree or certificate, or you could sort by event. And even cooler, these guys made sure in their Search API that their meta description showed up. So you have an even better idea of knowing whether or not what you click on is going to be accurate. Ooh, somebody just asked a really good question of advising against tokens for meta descriptions and forcing content editors to think about what the descriptions for each page should say. I will be honest, I'm not quite sure about the meaning of the tokens, but I always advise forcing content editors to think about what the descriptions for each page should say. And at some point, like you can set character limits. I know that I've worked with a particular editorial tool called Gather Content, and I include SEO fields for page titles and page descriptions that set character limits. And the Gather Content tool also has the ability to add some instructive copy saying, be sure to include a call to action. Be sure to include a particular keyword in your page description. I feel that meta descriptions don't get enough love. So anytime you can force a content editor to include a description, it's a good thing. I mean, if you're running out of time, I would recommend prioritizing forcing them to put in alt text for accessibility. But if you can do that for page descriptions, it would be pretty great. And again, just talking about what these guys did, they confirmed that all descriptions were short. This first one's a little long, so Google will cut it off. But again, it's still pretty short and you know what you're going to get. The only recommendation that I would have would be if the search term could be in boldface, so it's easier for users to scan, especially if it's not in the title. And yeah, if it were empty, it could just default to body. You're right. You do have to prioritize. I could say in higher ed, most of them have over 1K pages. Sometimes they'll just use templates or the same page description over and over again. And that can be a bit of a hassle. But yes, limiting the page length. And if you are setting a length indicator, I would recommend anything under 160 characters. That's the standard. The next piece would be for alternatives. So beyond providing the filters so people can fine tune their results through facets, what do you do if there are no results? This is an opportunity for some creativity. You could have a 404 page. I've got a client that's got a broken pencil. Unfortunately, they are on Drupal, so I couldn't show them today, but they've got a broken pencil and a whoops, our bad. But what you could do is, if there are no search results, your standard page can have 3 of the most common options. And this particular client says, if there are no results found, and I purposely put in Godzilla to ensure that there were no results found, they still have the ability for me to go to their 3 most popular links for searching for content, and that is the program finder, the course finder, and the directory. The other scenario that you want to prepare for in your search engine results page for on-site search is human error, especially on mobile, because no one types correctly in mobile. Everyone's in a hurry, they're using their thumbs. So including the search API spell check and providing a did you mean note is always really, really helpful. And this to me seems to be one of the easiest things you can do. Second to including a page description for your content is adding a did you mean note, because more and more, especially in higher ed, a higher percentage of prospective students are on mobile. You're going to get a lot of typos. And I see a lot of the terms that lead to the site and on-site search terms through Google Analytics, and most of them are misspelled. So having a did you mean note is huge. So ways to improve. I know I'm coming up on time, so if I'm talking too fast, just give me a shout out. I've got one eye on the chat here. I'm not sure if D8 has a spell check. That is a good question. If anybody could answer, Jenny, that would be awesome. I love how you guys are like talking to each other here. That ways to improve is analyzing the terms that you are getting. So I've got a sample here that I took from Google Analytics. I also work in Google Analytics as part of my job, and you can see what people are using and what terms they're using specifically in your on-site search, which is how I know that on-site search tends to be for really, really focused information. You can see through Google Analytics what percentage of visits involve site search, and then you can also see the most popular on-site search terms. For this particular client, the percentage of on-site search is really low, but it also applies to people who are already engaged with you. So they are very, I would almost call them VIP searchers. So even if the percentage of the site search is low, that's a sign that you need to be improving your results, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that you need to give them a lot of attention because they are further down your marketing funnel. Also, here for this client, even though they have a low percentage of people using the on-site search, the percentage of search exits is actually pretty low. It's at about 17%, which means users are viewing more than one page after they search. You can get this data on Google Analytics, and you can see that users are spending almost 3 minutes after they use site search. That's an even bigger indicator that when somebody is using your on-site search, they already want to be engaged with you, and you want to keep them happy and exploring. So back to the funnel, this is just a reiteration that a lot of the terms that you would see in higher ed would involve something very specific, even in your particular vertical. And search terms can also show you what is popular seasonally. If you can get the chance to look at the on-site search terms through your Google Analytics, you could get a lot of ideas for content to share over certain time periods. And you can think about what the search results look like when people make those searches. So if you see an on-site search term that is really popular, you might want to see where people are going afterwards and make sure that it looks good and that it's serving their needs. You can use Google Analytics to see which links people go to next. And so if they're not leaving immediately or going on to a different page, that's a pretty good sign. This is also very interesting for this particular client. This is an example of synonyms, and I'm looking forward to the conversation about this. This is a Drupal 8 client, And I found in looking at their Google Analytics that a lot of people who use the on-site search use the term majors. However, this particular school uses the term concentration instead of majors. So an example of improving their search would be even just going in and seeing what you can do to figure out that this should actually be directing to the concentrations page instead of a list of performances, which it goes to now. These are the types of things where in an on-site search, and it goes back to the page description, it helps to know about the content as anything else. I see we fixed it. Yes. And academic calendar fares better. My only suggestions would be to have a basic set of filters. Martin, you're there. Yay. We've met. Hello. And also to display the distinct meta descriptions. So if you guys get the chance to show off your meta descriptions, then here you can see there's a lot of content under academics. But if that pulled out a particular page description, then you know where you're going to go next when you click on academics. And I think you can see this is a pretty cool site. So you're going to want to explore it. You're going to want to realize where you want to go next. And I'm getting close to time, but I can share the specific Drupal tools that iFactory uses. We use Search API combined with Solr. Elasticsearch is popular. And then one other one that one of our developers is looking at is lunar.js. And then to set up a faceted search, use Facets for Drupal 8 Plus and Facets API for Drupal 7. To enable autocomplete, which is kind of my buddy, Search API autocomplete. And also my buddy, Search API spell check. So I talked a lot. I think I answered questions throughout. And the main thing, if there's one thing you take away from this, consider thinking about your on-site search as much as you do your organic search, and fill out your meta descriptions. Or if you guys are developers, force your content editors to fill out your meta descriptions. And in terms of sharing slides, I'm going to post the slide share link on Twitter at PepperyPen. At PepperyPen is my Twitter handle. I'm going to post that there. And I am at LinkedIn. And I've got my email, so you can definitely see that over there. Ooh, where there are synonym gaps. Ooh, okay, just got a question. Where there are synonym gaps is the best strategy to update content on the page. Ooh, that's a good question. Typos, I think that Google helps with that. I cannot answer that question. Oh, that's a good question. I can post the link here. Thank you. There you go. Image file names. Use the words and hyphens. Yes. Typing that now. Okay, I guess I should probably wind down because we are close to time. Thank you, guys. Thank you. And if I couldn't answer a question, you guys did an awesome job answering each other's questions. I am not a developer, but feel free to tweet at me on the Twitter or the LinkedIn, and I can definitely reach out to one of the brainiacs that I work with. Okay, bye.